Let's talk about generational wealth, generational curses, and money. And most specifically, let's talk about how generational curses are passed down much more often than generational wealth or money is. If you're enjoying my content, please like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell, and I'm coming right back at you. Hey YouTube, it's your girl, The Real Teddy Talks, educating you daily on entrepreneurship, your hustle and your grind, and building generational wealth. And today, we're talking about generational wealth. So let's talk about money and wealth, and how wealth generally isn't passed down to the next generation. And when it is passed down, it's passed down in the form of money, and usually not assets. And then the assets that actually are passed down are auctioned off to the highest bidder, and it's turned into money, and then it doesn't last the oncoming generations. Statistics show that wealth that's passed down generation to generation is usually dwindled or gone by the second generation. 70% have lost that wealth by the second generation, and 90% of that wealth is gone by the third generation. And those are hard-hitting facts, right? Because I don't live to pass things down to my kids, but I work hard so that I can have generational wealth for the generations to come. And I'm doing this because it hasn't been done in the past and it hasn't been done for me. So let's kind of break it down a little bit. Let's talk about the families that have generational wealth and how they maintain it. And that gives all the rest of us something to shoot for and aim for in our plans to pass down generational wealth to our children and their children. The first thing that generations do that pass wealth down to their future generations is they talk about money. They talk about money to their children, and they talk about money to their grandchildren. And not just money, they talk about assets and the difference between things and assets. They talk about investing. They talk about money management. They talk about real estate, what to buy, when, how long to hold it for, and when to get rid of, and what type of things to buy. So if you're going to buy things, you need to buy a bed that's made out of solid wood instead of a bed that's not. It's fancy and looks nice, but won't last 10 or 20 years. I think a lot of parents from my generation, probably my husband's generation, feel that money has been a burden, whether it's the having of money or the lack of money that's been a burden. So they tend to not talk about it. And when it is talked about, it's talked about secretively or it's talked about negatively. And that's what creates those generational curses. Because if my mom never talked to me specifically about money management, how money comes into our household, how it has to be spent on necessities, how it has to be saved, how it has to be invested, and what that needs to look like 5, 10, 20, 50 years from now, then how am I going to learn that and then teach that to my kids if I wasn't taught that at home? I'm going to have the wherewithal and the knowledge to seek that information on my own, learn it, and then use it. And that is something that I did have to do, so I had to overcome that generational curse, but everyone doesn't even know it's something they need to overcome. So you see how the cycle can just keep going on and on. A lot of other families that do have money in their family don't talk about the money because they don't want to create this false sense of security for the future generations. If you knew that if you were my child or my grandchild, and you knew I had $1 million in the bank, and I'm in my 80s or 90s, and I'm going to leave that money to you, that could cause you to make poor decisions. That could cause you to be frivolous with money because you know that you're going to get this windfall when I pass away. So you don't talk about it. But the problem with that is, then when I pass away, I haven't talked about it. I haven't taught you any of the things you need to know about money. So when I die and you're left a portion of that money, you don't know what to do with it. Money burns holes in people's pocket. Money doesn't solve money problems, right? If you don't know what to do with money, you don't have a good financial planning, you don't know what ratios are, credit ratios are, how to invest and hold on to money, what interest is, then if I give you a ton of money, you're still not going to know those things. The having of the money doesn't fix the problem. It's the parents and the grandparents and the elders of that family's responsibility to pass down that knowledge generation to generation so that those future generations in hopes can learn from it and do the same. The second thing that families with generational wealth that are passing it on to their generations do is they show them and not just tell them. So as they're coming up, they show them how to be frugal with their money. They show them what you should buy and what you shouldn't buy. They show them how to make business deals. They show them how to know the right people. They show them how to make connections that can get them to the nice things and the next things. They show them that they need to have a good lawyer, a good CPA, and know a good real estate agent. They're showing them all these things as they're growing up. So it's not foreign when they're put in the position to do it on their own. And that's the same thing with children, right? You can't tell a child, if I'm a smoker, I can't be smoking every day and tell my kids, don't smoke, it's bad for you. They're not going to do what I tell them, they're going to do what they see. Same thing with financial or generational wealth. You have to show them better than you can tell them. For instance, I have a funny story. I live in Cairo, Egypt, and I was out the other day looking for some alabaster candle holders, alabaster stone. And I ran across this shop that appeared to be closed. So as I was standing outside the shop, looking in the window, it's the middle of the day, and this 10-year-old and his friend, probably another 10 or 11-year-old, they come along and they open up the shop for me. So the shop is shut down. There's two 10-year-olds that are responsible for the key. They open up the shop. They're speaking Egyptian, and I speak Arabic, but I don't speak Egyptian very well. And, we're having very light conversation and greetings. They turn on the lights. They make a phone call. 5 or 10 minutes later, I assume to be the father comes, and it's his shop, and he's helping me facilitate the transactions in the store. And I loved it. I'm like, these 10-year-olds were put in charge of this store. So if anybody comes, they open it up and let the person in, and they call the father, and he comes. Like, I can't even imagine, right? I know I could have done that as a 10-year-old, but I think these new generations, we think they can't do things like that. But children are freaking amazing. Give them the knowledge and the power to do what you could have done or you wish you could have done as a child, and they will amaze you. So give them the tools they need for success. The third thing people with generational wealth do is they recognize who they should leave their money to. And if their future generations aren't industrious and savvy with money, they cut them out the will. I remember watching movies in the 80s and 90s where there was like these really wealthy rich people, and they wouldn't leave the money to a certain person because he was lazy or irresponsible. And I get it now, because they were to leave all of their hard-earned money to this one rascal who doesn't do anything and doesn't care about anything. That money's going to be gone before that person's probably in their old age, right? So it'll be lost in one generation. And people who have worked to attain generational wealth don't want it squandered away in less than one generation. They hope that it'll go from generation to generation. So if you have generations ahead of you or behind you, generations behind you that don't have their crap together, do not leave them your money. They will not do good with it. And the fourth and final thing that I see people with generational wealth do is they notice who is frugal and opportunity seekers in their family, and they tend to leave their money to them. And this is the same reason as before. They know that they're going to perpetuate that generational wealth. Even with the best of intentions, it's sometimes hard to hold on to generational wealth. And we're talking people that are leaving tens of millions of dollars, right? We're not talking about someone that's leaving $500,000, $1 million, $1.5 million, grandma's house who might be worth $600,000 and that's it. She has no other assets. I mean, we're talking multi-millionaires. It's hard to hold on to that wealth. So if you're starting off with $500,000, $1 million, $1.5 million, it's hard for you to hold on to it as well. So you need to be frugal. You need to know how to live in your means, and you need to know what assets are, what investing is, and how to seek out opportunities to not just hold on to that money, but make it grow. And I tell you all this because generational wealth is so important to a lot of us. Generational wealth is so important to me and my husband. We even named one of our companies after our children because we want them to know that they were on our minds when we created this company, and we want to leave this for them to go forth and flourish. That puts a lot of pressure on the future generations, but it also prepares them for success. If you want to leave generational wealth, you need to plan for it now. And every move you make, you need to be thinking about how it's going to affect those future generations, what you're doing to teach them what they need to know, and how you're going to help that money grow long after you're not here. Invest in yourself just 1% a day, and invest in your future generations, and have phenomenal results when it's all said and done. This is the Real Teddy Talks, your exit strategy specialist, signing off.